management.
Hello, good afternoon. You are locked into Revive FM 94.0 on the Power Hour. This show is about community matters, diversity and inclusion, a platform for women, leadership, entrepreneurship and inspirational stories. And on today's show, I have a special guest, Mr. Laurence. He is a senior TV correspondent and filmmaker working on mainstream platforms such as Al Jazeera, the BBC and Sky. Welcome to the show, Mr. Lee.
Hi, it's lovely to be on the Power Hour. I've never been in a show called the Power Hour before.
It's a one-of-a-kind show, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that we can get something very powerful out of the Power Hour today for our listeners. And I'm really excited about today's show. I'm looking forward to hearing about yourself and your up-and-coming ventures. And I'm just looking forward to our conversation. So whereabouts are you today in the world?
I would say sunny Peckham, but it's not very sunny outside. It's blowing a gale and the rain's coming down sideways. But I'm in Peckham. We've been here 10 years and I love Peckham. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the greatest weather. We have to sort of pretend that it's sunny and lovely and warm outside. And Mr. Laurence, if you just give a little bit of a background to the listeners about yourself. You've got a really exciting, fantastic career, very inspirational. If you just give a little bit of a backstory about yourself and your journalism, presenting life and such like.
Sure. Well, I'm not from London. I'm actually from Coventry in the West Midlands, and my parents were both from Coventry as well. And I had a sort of, a relatively okay upbringing. Coventry. Frankly, it's I feel very fond and nostalgic towards the place, but it had a terrible time. It got you probably know it got bombed very heavily in the Second World War, and it never really recovered very well. And my parents' generation had all sorts of trouble trying to work out what to do because a lot of the factories never really recovered. Not just in the war as well. I mean, Thatcherism, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And the politics of the 1980s were absolutely disastrous for places like Coventry and the industrial base of the UK. And certainly when my dad had a little engineering business, and he supplied parts partly for car factories. But when I was growing up, I remember in the 1980s, all the car factories, one after the other, all started closing down.
Right.
And everybody lost their jobs. This is when the specials who were from Coventry wrote Ghost Town about Coventry. And it was dead right, because when I was a teenager growing up there, as they sang, all the clubs are being closed down, and it really was a pretty miserable place to be growing up. And there wasn't much in the way of opportunity. My dad thought I might go into his business with him, but he lost it.
What business was it that he had? What business was your dad doing at the time?
A little engineering business he had. It was in the back. It was behind our house. And he employed about 30 people making bits and pieces for the car companies, but he lost his business as well. Okay. And ultimately that did for him, frankly. His health never really recovered from it. And so I went off to university in Birmingham and did a degree and didn't really know what I was going to do afterwards. But my mum then said to me, at that time there was a BBC centre, big BBC centre called Pebble Mill. This was in the 1980s, just really over the road from the university where I was studying. And she said, why don't you try and go and get some work experience on the radio station? This is called Radio WM, Radio West Midlands. It's still there now. So I wrote the boss of the radio station a letter, and he took me for 2 weeks on work experience. And it was on a show much like yours, actually. I was a researcher on the afternoon programme, just to begin with, for a couple of weeks, and it was all right, didn't think that much of it, but I'm sure not as good as your show, I'll tell you that.
But you had the incentive to write the letter. I think that's the first thing that stood out to me, that actually.
I just thought I might as well have a go and see what happened. But I didn't at that time, I was sort of 21, and I didn't really think I wanted to be in the media at all. I didn't have a clue, frankly, what I wanted to do. And so I wrote my letter and he came and I did this thing on the afternoon show. And then he said, did you fancy having a look at the newsroom? And I went into the newsroom and I just thought it was the best thing that ever happened, because with everyone running around and, they were off. There were these things I don't know whether you remember these things called ewers, which was a sort of tape to tape deck that you carried on like a satchel. Yeah, and when you did your interview, did it on tape to tape, and you'd come in and have a razor blade and bits of tape and sticking it all together, and then you get your sound bite, and you'd stick it on a cartridge. Those are all things that were there before cassettes even, and when you were doing the news, you had 3 of these cartridges in a stack for the first 3 sorts of video sound bites or whatever they were in the news, and you go in for like a 10-minute bulletin. When I ended up reading the news, you go in with about 10 of these. So it was, really feels like a very long time ago now. But anyway, I did another couple of weeks work experience there, and then they said, well, you've had your work experience, that's you, because we got a line of people wanted to do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, at that point, and this was the amazingly good piece of luck that I had, the BBC opened a local radio station in Coventry, where they didn't have one. So I moved back in with my parents, and got a bit of work experience on this local radio station in Coventry, and I ended up doing a year unpaid work at the BBC, and the only way I could actually do it was because I moved back in with my parents, and they sort of paid for me basically while I was living at home. And in the end, I then got a 3-month contract for like £1,000 a month, and another 3-month contract, and eventually that turned into a staff job. And I did a mixture of producing the breakfast programme, and I did some reporting and news reading. And then after 4 years of that, I went back to Radio WM, where it started on work experience, as a reporter and newsreader. Did that for a year. And then in the same newsroom as the radio station, there was the regional TV called Midlands Today, with the sort of, what was it the equivalent of, what was the BBC news programme in London called? It's not London Tonight, that's the ITV one. But anyway.
Yeah, like
so, whatever, South East Tonight, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So they then gave me a screen test, and I started off on the TV as a presenter, presenting the evening news. But I found that quite boring actually, and because I wanted to be a reporter, that was really what I wanted to do. So I did. Most people become reporters, and then want to be presenters because they like being famous, and it's a bit of less work for them. But I did it the other way around. I then stopped presenting and became a reporter, and did that for a few years, and then wrote Sky News in London a letter, and they said, we'll give you 50 freelance shifts, 50 days of freelance shifts. So I thought, well, go on, you might as well, because if it doesn't work, I thought I'll just go back to Birmingham, because but I did it, and it worked out, and I had a couple of breaks along the way. And then after about a year of that, they gave me a staff job, and I started doing a lot of national news. And then they started sending me to foreign countries. So my first foreign trip was in Russia, where a nuclear submarine had sunk, and in the Baltic Sea. It was crazy stuff. And then I started working in the Middle East, and did 2 years in Jerusalem during the whole of the second Palestinian uprising. Which was, amazing, but really dangerous at the same time. And by this stage, I'd sort of really got the bug for foreign travel. And then Sky made me bureau chief in Moscow, and so I spent 3.5 years in Moscow, and then came back to London when we were my wife and I were in the process of getting married and having our first child, and that's when Al Jazeera launched. So I thought, well, Al Jazeera sounds quite interesting, because I was really interested in sort of different sorts of news from different parts of the world, and different perspectives on things. So that was when I joined Al Jazeera as Delhi correspondent in India. Yeah. And so I did that for a bit.
2007. Yeah,
that was 2000. That was right. Yeah, January the 1st, 2007. Yeah. And so I did that, and I ended up doing well. I actually left Al Jazeera last week. After all that time there, so my journey through it has, I've been amazingly lucky, and I've been to sort of 70 or 80 countries around the world, and seen all kinds of stuff along the way, and it's been the most wonderful thing. But it's not the sort of traditional route that most people take, because certainly if you've got some money behind you, and particularly if you're from London, you go to one of the journalism universities in London, and they nowadays they seem to think that you can get a straight line in from that into international television, and well, very, very good luck to you if you can do that. But that wasn't the route I took. I started right at the bottom and worked my way up to where I finished up.
And it doesn't sound like you were just about to. You just said it doesn't sound like you took the conventional route. You wrote letters actually right at the beginning of your career when your mum sort of said, "Why don't you go for it?" And then you wrote a letter, and you was creating your own opportunity there. And then again, even though you had that experience in the newsroom and you gathered a name for yourself and you was being paid, again with Sky you wrote a letter, which in turn gave you an opportunity for some freelance. You wasn't sure if that was going to work. And you was thinking, oh, if it doesn't work, I'll go back. But again, you wrote the letter. So I think there's something there about sort of like creating your own opportunity, even, though you wasn't quite sure what was going to happen there.
Yeah. And I mean, to some degree, you've got to make your own luck. And
Yeah.
I know it's easy for me to say that because, I was from a sort of moderately middle-class family. And, I could afford to go and live in London, which even then, I mean, God, I remember the first flat I lived in London, because Sky News is way out in West London in Osterley. And I was renting a one-bedroom flat in Kew, which is, quite close by. I didn't know London at all. I was driving around with an A to Z thinking, where am I going for this interview? It felt so, well, when I was in Coventry, Birmingham was massive. I thought, God, I'm going out in Birmingham tonight. It's huge. and then so you get to London, you think, I can't deal with this. It's all too big.
You was from a smaller town.
But anyway, but I remember I joined Sky in 1997, and for a one-bedroom flat in Kew, which is obviously quite a rich part of London, that a one-bedroom flat then was costing me £1,000 a month. So it's quite expensive. It really is, and I'm perfectly well aware it's outside the scope of most people to be able to do it. But I mean, to your first bit of the point, I think absolutely right. Letters, don't give up, and to some degree, you have to try and make your own luck. Yeah, that's definitely true. And
you was talking about the fact that now the route would be people would go to a journalism school, a well-known journalism school that's obviously quite expensive, and they take that route, and then they may be amongst the right networks, know the right people. Do these letters even still work? I mean, if you don't go to these top journalism schools and you send in a CV or a show reel or some information, do they even get looked at? What's the process for people that are interested in the industry that way?
Yeah, I mean, it is really hard. I mean, I've done some speaking at some of these colleges, and afterwards, all the students have come to me and said, "Here's my email. Here's my CV. Is there anything that you can do?" And it is really difficult. I mean, occasionally I met one or two, and I've managed to get them in to places where I've worked, and a couple of them have just flown and they've gone off really well. But there's obviously just a really big queue of people trying to do it. But I do think the thing that's changed nowadays is, because of digital
social media.
Well, yeah, social media, yeah, and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and everything else. People have to be entrepreneurial about this, and if you can make your own content, even if it's only on your mobile, which is obviously what we're talking about later on. Even if it's that, and you can, as YouTube have demonstrated, if you can broadcast yourself, then there are ways that you can really completely circumvent traditional media and even make a living out of not actually getting a job in the media at all. There are people on YouTube who make mountains of money, who've never been in a newsroom.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested actually to talk about mainstream media and the new venture that you are looking to go into. You're particularly looking at the fact that those people that are not necessarily interested in YouTube or doing things on social media on their phone, but really have a burning desire to get into journalism, to get into the industry, be on national television and be on mainstream, radio or whatever. And of course, there's pitfalls in it, and it can be quite difficult. You're now looking at a new venture, which will be giving training to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds so that they may be able to seek other avenues. Tell us about that.
Well, I think possibly because of where I come from, because I'm not from London, and I didn't know anybody in the media at all when I started. I was completely naive. I never did a journalism course in my life. I went to night school to learn how to touch type and things like that. I've always regarded it as a bit elitist and a closed shop.
Right.
And for all the efforts that you can see the national media trying to make at the moment to do things like increase diversity, my own opinion is that they're slightly struggling with it, and I don't think they're getting it right. And you can see that partly because the overwhelming majority of people you see on the television news in the evening are white, and frankly, in my opinion, a lot of the people who aren't white, who you see on the television, if you shut your eyes and listen to them, what they say is exactly the same, and you can tell they come from privileged backgrounds, even if they're not white. And that, for me, that doesn't feel like diversity. It feels like assimilation.
Yeah.
And it certainly doesn't demonstrate a diversity of opinions. And part of the reason why I joined Al Jazeera and was very interested in it was because, particularly in its early days, it was very keen to do stories which offered entirely different perspectives on an issue, and I was very interested in that as a concept. But my big complaint is that we live very close to the Peckham Academy, and I see these kids, and they're immaculately presented, and really polite, and I think I bet you've got loads of talent between you lot, and no one ever gives them a chance, and I feel that really deeply, actually. And so I had this dream for years and years, which I didn't even tell anybody about, and I just kept thinking, I wish I could win the lottery, because I could set up a journalism academy for disadvantaged kids in Peckham. Wouldn't that be amazing if I could do that and just completely subvert everything that everybody else is doing? Because I'm a bit like that, and it won't surprise you to learn that actually I haven't won the lottery. Up until now, but the problem that I faced was that if you're trying to set up a project where you're aiming directly at people who don't get those chances you can't start working with these people until you got some money behind you, but you can't get anybody to give you any money until you got started. And so I kept on having the catch-22, thinking, well, how do I get started? And in the end, I've managed to extricate myself from a job at Al Jazeera, which I thoroughly loved for many years, and in some ways I'm very sad to leave. But I've managed to get out with a little bit of money behind me in order to fund this project while I try and investigate how I can scale it and get some proper money behind me so I can get it bigger. But the main point behind it is, and this I think is the beauty of it for me, is that nowadays, almost whatever background kids are from, the one thing that almost everybody's got, unless they're in complete poverty, is a mobile phone. Yeah, and it's absolutely amazing, when you see this on TikTok, it's so intuitive, and the kids are so absolutely brilliant at imagining funny little things they can do on their mobile phones. And they're great. They're creating their own content.
Absolutely,
which is fantastic for me, because what it means is I've got a built-in advantage when I want to go and see these people, because I don't have to teach them how to use a camera that's this big and a tripod and microphones and all this shizzle, and because they can publish themselves through social media. So
hold that thought for me, Hold that thought for me, Laurence. We're going to go into a short commercial break. Please do not touch that dial. We'll be right back on the Power Hour. If you'd like to call in and ask some questions, give us a call on 0333 444 0940. Don't touch that dial.
Thousands of people who suffered sexual abuse as children have now been heard.
It was wonderful to be finally listened to.
The Truth Project, part of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, will close in 2021. But for now, we're still here to listen, to hear your experience. and help create a safer future for children. Search Truth Project.
Did you know that girls like Noura walk an average of 3 miles every day in search of clean water to support their families? Minhaj Welfare Foundation believes you can end the water crisis by building small and large-scale water projects. Your charity is helping improve the lives of communities living in the poorest regions of the world. However, more needs to be done. Support Water for All. Donate today. Call us now 0300 30 30 777 or visit us on minhajwelfare.org.
Here at Duncan Lewis Solicitors, we specialize in immigration and family law. We have a proven track record of successful applicants who we've helped secure permanent residency for. From spouse visas to seeking asylum, our expert advisors will assist you throughout the whole application process. We offer a free no obligation consultation, so call us now on 0208 432 3350. That's 0208 432 3350, or visit us at 298 Romford Road, London, E79HD.
Minhaj School of Islamic Sciences provides quality Islamic education for children aged between 5 and 15 years old. As well as teaching classical Islam, including Tajweed, Fiqh, Seerah and Aqidah, we endeavour to equip children with essential Islamic manners, morals and values. Here at MSIS, our experienced teachers create an inspirational learning environment where we strive to cater for the needs of every child. For enrolment inquiries, inquire in person at Minhaj School of Islamic Sciences, Monday to Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. at 292-296 Romford Road, or email admin.edu_London@minhajuk.org.
Thinking about selling or letting your home? With Maxwell Estates, you don't need to look any further. Well established with over 15 years of experience, Maxwell Estates are specialists in residential sales and lettings. We manage over 200 properties in and around Northwest London, keeping our landlords and tenants updated with all the latest laws and legislations. Based in Edgware, our experienced specialist negotiators always ensure we maximize the full potential of your property. Call us now on 0208 952 0808 for a free no obligation quotation, or visit our website www.maxwellestates.co.uk for further information. Maxwell Estates, the name you can trust.
Hello, I'm Ria from the Windrush Help Team. If you came to the UK before the end of 1988 and are struggling to prove your legal status, I could help. You may also be entitled to compensation. I'm here to answer your questions and talk you through the application process. Anything you tell us will be treated sensitively and won't be passed on to immigration enforcement. Visit gov.uk/Windrush Help Team.
The Windrush Help Team, here to support you and your family.
If you want to advertise your business on Revive FM, then visit www.revivefm.co.uk or contact our sales team now on 07944 565616. That's 07944 565616. Advertise with Revive FM.
Revive FM
94.0 on the radio,
on your mobile
and online.
Hello and welcome back. You are locked into Revive FM 94 on the Power Hour with myself, Louise Power. This show is about community matters, diversity and inclusion, a platform for women, leadership, entrepreneurship and inspirational stories. And today in the studio, I have Mr. Laurence Lee. He is a senior TV correspondent and filmmaker from Al Jazeera, BBC, Sky and other mainstream platforms. Welcome back to the show.
Power Hour.
Welcome back. So before the break, we was talking about sunny Peckham, where you're from, and we were speaking about your journey in the mainstream media industry, starting in Coventry, coming over to London, back over there in Coventry, and how you created, in a way, your own opportunities by writing letters and taking a grasp of your own success in a sense. You didn't come from a conventional sort of journalism school or anything like that. And then we were speaking about your new venture to work with young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, and really where that comes from as well is partly because of your own experience. So yeah, on the tail end we were just on the tail end, and I did sort of like cut you there where you was talking about the reasons why you're passionate about And you spoke about, you wishing that you could just win the lottery, actually, because, you would be paying for loads of these young people. But in actual fact, that isn't the case. In reality, it's not that easy. And then there's a chicken and the egg situation where if you haven't got experience, then you can't get the role. But then if you can't get the role without the experience, and of course, then you need the funding for that. So, so that's where we was. And I'll let you finish what you were saying before the break.
Well, and I think the thing that's really striking to me is we were talking about how these young kids are so adept nowadays at making content of their own on their mobile phones, and that's, for me, that's a really wonderful opportunity, because it means I haven't got to go into sixth forms, which is the group of people I'm aiming at to begin with. With all this TV equipment and all that kind of stuff, because they can film and edit their own stuff. And so what I want to do is to try to use those existing skills, but to sort of professionalize them in a way. I've now started. I made this little announcement where you found me, Louise, on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and it had the most extraordinary response. I mean, thousands and thousands of people reacting to it and saying, I haven't actually tried to add them all up yet. The number of journalists and TV people that I know who are saying, please, how can I help with this? And the number of schools who've said, can I come and get involved? So where I am at the moment, I'm booked in already in 2 schools, one in Nunhead and one actually up in Oxford for 6-week training sessions. The schools do this thing called enrichment on here. It's on Wednesday afternoons, where they have to give the kids some sort of exposure to the world of work and careers advice and things like that. So I'm going to be going into, for example, to this lovely school in Nunhead every Wednesday afternoon from November, and they've chosen 8 kids who are interested in filmmaking and current affairs and this sort of thing, and we're going to make some films together on their mobile phones about whatever they want. I mean, it could be Black Lives Matter, it could be food poverty, it could be Stormzy, it could be football. It doesn't matter, but because the principle is the same. What I want to do is to teach them how to tell a story, and in doing that, and this is the really interesting bit, certainly from what all the schools say to me, it's about confidence building and being able to express yourself. In the way that you've learned, however you did it, how to express yourself. That's why you got a radio show. A lot of these kids don't ever have any advice from anybody about how to express themselves. And if I can use the techniques that I've learned along the way, in terms of how you broadcast yourself, and how you speak into a camera, or you speak to a room, then that I hope is going to be really useful to them in terms of their confidence building, and when they go off and do a university interview or a job interview, and that sort of stuff. Because the thing is, if you can speak into a camera without fear, then you can speak to a classroom full of kids, or you can speak to a courtroom if you're a lawyer. It's really the same. It's about assembling your thoughts and being confident. And the thing is, kids from privileged backgrounds are taught how to do this from when they're little, and so it's easy for them. The kids that I'm talking about might all have the talent in the world, but they never get shown how to do it.
Hold that thought there. Actually, this is really, really powerful, because learning to be able to do that skill, like you said, these young people may not actually go into a career in media or journalism at all, but just
most won't want to.
And most might want to, but just having that enrichment training with you and being able to learn, self-confidence, it will empower them to cut out some of the things that we feel when we're a little bit older, like imposter syndrome and am I good enough to be in front of the camera? Do I sound okay? And you said something about young children from privileged backgrounds do that naturally, or get taught that anyway when they're young. What do you mean?
Because they're always told that they're great. Right. Because you go to a good school, you got the best teachers, you got the best facilities, You get really good exams all the time. Everybody says, congratulations, you're fantastic. You grow up believing you're fantastic, right? I mean, this is a problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll just tell you two really, really quick stories about me, right? First one, when I was a little boy, I was a year young at school. And because I was short, this kid in the playground used to pull my hair out in big chunks every day. And when I was about 7 or 8, I developed this massive speech impediment. And I remember they were going around the class reading bits out of Dick Whittington. And I was thinking, please don't get to me. The lesson's got to end before it gets to me, because when it gets to me, I'm not going to be able to speak. You have to stand up and read a paragraph out of Dick Whittington. This is etched on my soul, believe me. And I stood up and I went, and I couldn't speak. And the whole class went up into uproar, and the teacher thought I was taking the mickey, and I was in floods of tears and up with the head teacher. And so I had to have several years of speech therapy when I was a little boy, because I couldn't speak. And one of the things I really want to do through this is speak to kids who do have speech impediments and speech issues, and just tell them that if I had that when I was their age and I went on to be an international TV correspondent, and where my job is to talk, then you can do it too. That's one thing. And the second thing I wanted to tell you was when I did my first TV bulletin at Midlands Today that I told you earlier on. It was a 1:15 long bulletin on a Sunday lunchtime, and nobody was watching, Midlands Today at 12:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday. I was so nervous. You could actually, I've got a tape of it somewhere. When you got pieces of paper, you're reading 4 things out, and each one's 15 seconds long. It's a 1-minute-long bulletin, right? My hands were shaking so much you can hear the pieces of paper flapping around as they're falling on the floor. So if I go on the television now, I don't get nervous at all, because I've done it for 30 years. But it's nerve-wracking. It's really, really scary. Isn't it? You're right.
I can concur with exactly what you're saying when you talked about when you were younger and you find it really, and then you were saying that you had this speech impediment, and then you was talking about being nervous. I struggled for years with public speaking, up until even within the last few years. I really found it difficult. I had to go and speak, for example, for my business or do a pitch or something like that, and I was petrified. But I think for me, in terms of, I guess, my own confidence, was the fact that from a young age, I was always into drama and I was always into the arts anyway. So I think naturally I had that inside of me. But I did come from a disadvantaged background, in that I come from an area where there was disparity and poverty. And when I was young, I also spent some time in local authority care. So I would say that I definitely did come from parents that done their best and had, a great family, but I also did experience some of what it is that you are interested in the areas that you're interested in working in. So I understand how nobody sort of teaches you these things. And if you have a talent like I did, and this is one of the reasons why I was so interested, and I reached out and we started talking, because if you have a talent and that isn't developed, and you don't go to these fantastic schools or universities or colleges that you speak about, how then are you able to put that into fruition? It's just not going to happen, is it?
No, that's right. And this is what I find so enormously frustrated is there are thousands and thousands of kids who leave school when they're 16 or 17 years old every year. And they might have all the talent in the world. They might be journalists, or they might want to be filmmakers, or they might want to do something else creative, or they might want to do something else that's about projecting yourself and speaking, in any number of jobs. But it's just a massive wasted opportunity.
Yeah.
I've
got some stats. Sorry. After.
Well, no, I was only going to say, I mean, the thing that I've been watching, obviously, all this Black Lives Matter stuff over the last few months, and it's as important as I think it is, in the States and here as well, that it's one thing, everybody jumping up and down and saying this can't go on. But in a sense, my complaint about the whole thing is because there's no sort of leadership or structure to it, and it hasn't got a set of demands or a focus other than please treat us as equals and take us more seriously, it doesn't sort of get anybody anywhere. That's the thing about it. And I think it becomes incumbent on people who might have any sort of skill set that they have to offer to actually get stuck in and say, okay, fine, I completely agree with everything that you've said, but this is what I think what I can actually do about it. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of people who have far greater skills than I do in all sorts of different areas. But the one thing that I can do, because I've taught myself how to do it over the years, is deliver messages in a reasonable and fairly passionate way. And that sort of sense of performance and conviction and being able to deliver something is massively important, because if you're going for a job interview along with 50 other kids at a time like this, in wherever it is, I mean, it might be a decent job or it might be a terrible job. If you can turn up and be really convincing, then you've got a much better chance of getting the job than other people who might not get their words out straight. And it's just getting hold of those kids before they're spat out into the world, by which time you've lost them. That's the thing that I'm trying to get hold of. Yeah, and I think we do need people that are going to do things about it. It's one thing saying, Black Lives Matter is important, diversity inclusion is important, but if in the boardroom and at executive level and a senior executive level, and the people that are making decisions aren't actually doing anything about it, like you said, then it's just going to be a bit of waffle and a bit of talk. And the people that are on the ground, the Black people that are feeling the oppression and the inequality every day, have reached a point where they feel we have no choice but to go out and say, no, enough is enough. But like you say, even though enough is enough, and it is, the people that hold the power to be able to do something about it, if they agree, then we need to see more doing something about it. Yeah, then, right. I've got here, right, some information. So from a Guardian article, right? It says the British journalism industry is 94% white, 86% university educated, and 55% male, according to the damning survey of 700 news professionals conducted by City University London. The findings announced at the Changing Media Summit reveal that 65% of journalists who have joined the profession over the last 3 years are female, but the women remain underpaid and underpromoted, while almost all ethnic groups and religions are significantly underrepresented below that. So this is the actual reality, isn't it? Well, we were talking about this before. Yeah. It's, and it's the stuff I was talking about, diversity of opinions. That's the issue. If you watch the news in the evening, it's entirely sort of constructed around a set of preoccupations for a certain group of people. I mean, if for example, one of the big things that they're talking about at the moment is bars and pubs being shut because of COVID. That's all very well if you go to bars and pubs all the time, but plainly, lots of Black and Asian people don't go to bars and pubs at all. So and frankly, the amount of racism that got spewed out early on, with all these MPs saying, there's some of these people, and we know who they're talking about, don't know how to follow the rules. While you see, 100 young white kids on the beach jumping all over each other, getting drunk. So which group of people are you talking about who can't understand the rules? Sorry, just explain that once more for me. I really dislike a lot, and there are other words I could use for when they say the people. Do you know what I mean? It's so patronizing, so rude, and so racist. Yeah. So it's. I remember when I was working at Al Jazeera over the last few years, they had me covering Brexit. Hold that for me. We're going to go into another commercial break. Hold that thought about when you was working at Al Jazeera. We've got lots and lots of information and other conversation to come back to. Please do not touch that dial. You are locked into the Power Hour on Revive FM.
You have one new message. Can you please help us? We are running out of food.
We have many requests like this on a daily basis. Join us and help us keep families together. During this pandemic, many vulnerable and elderly people here and abroad need our support. Our teams are risking their lives to help save others, but we need your support. Call us now on 0114 365 4454 or visit us at familiesrelief.org.
I wash my hands to protect my family.
I wear a face covering to protect my mates.
I make space to protect my colleagues.
Hands.
Face.
Space.
I wash my hands to protect strangers.
I wear a face covering to protect other passengers.
I make space to protect you. Hands.
Face.
Space. As we spend more time indoors, we need to do whatever we can to help protect each other from coronavirus. So please, wash hands, cover face, make space.
Thinking about selling or letting your home? With Maxwell Estates, you don't need to look any further. Well established with over 15 years of experience, Maxwell Estates are specialists in residential sales and lettings. We manage over 200 properties in and around Northwest London, keeping our landlords and tenants updated with all the latest laws and legislations. Based in Edgware, our experienced specialist negotiators always ensure we maximize the full potential of your property. Call us now on 0208 952 0808 for a free no obligation quotation, or visit our website www.maxwellestates.co.uk for further information. Maxwell Estates, the name you can trust.
If you want to advertise your business on Revive FM, then visit www.revivefm.co.uk. Alternatively, contact our sales team now on 07944 56 5616. That's 07944 56 5616.
Thousands of people who suffered sexual abuse as children have now been heard.
It was wonderful to be finally listened to.
The Truth Project, part of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, will close in 2021. But for now, we're still here to listen, to hear your experience, and help create a safer future for children. Search Truth Project.
This is a message from the government. The law has changed. You must self-isolate if you test positive for coronavirus or are told to self-isolate by NHS Test and Trace. If you do not, you risk a penalty of £1,000 or more. Testing and isolating are vital to stopping the spread of coronavirus. Because this is so important, the government is now providing financial support for those who need it whilst self-isolating. You could be eligible for a £500 support payment if you're on low income and are unable to work because you're self-isolating. Find out if you're eligible at gov.uk/coronavirus. Break the cycle of infection, not the law. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Kebabish Original, one of the biggest names in the restaurant trade. Visit your local KO to experience the thrill of the grill and the most authentic Pakistani cuisine. From our kebabs to our curries and from our mixed platters to our peri-peri, our chefs prepare your food in front of you while you wait. KO is now offering franchise opportunities. To take advantage of our proven and successful business model, contact us on 0208 446 7779 or visit kebabishoriginal.co.uk.
Revive FM
94.0. On the radio.
On your mobile.
And online.
Welcome back to the Power Hour. And we have Mr. Laurence Lee in the studio. Welcome back.
Hi, still here.
Still here. We're just talking about the young people and the lack of opportunity in the journalism industry and how you're going to be disrupting that really and creating hope so
Someone's got to do it.
Creating some opportunities. I've got some information that there are 792,000 young people between the age of 16 to 24 that are not in education, employment or training. Pretty high numbers. That was as of 2019. June 2019. And of course, we know that a significant number of those probably are really talented, would love to be in the arts, in journalism, be a newsreader or a reporter or something like that, but never get a chance. Before the break, you was going to tell me about one of your first experiences with Al Jazeera, and then I cut you. Would you go back to that for me?
Yeah, well, but just on that point about the number of young people who are all NEETs and not in education and training or whatever. I mean, that's obviously very expensive for the country. You know, it would be far better for the country if, rather than just abandoning these people, which they seem to do at the moment, they actually, grabbed their talents and made them productive and gave them some, sense of themselves and made them productive, because then they can make some more money for the country as opposed to being a cost. That doesn't seem to be a particularly controversial thing to say, but I think it still needs saying. But no, the point I was just going to make really briefly when you went to the break was that one thing that really struck me over the last few years before I left Al Jazeera, I was primarily covering Brexit for the channel, which was one of the more intense experiences of my life because it's so complicated. And there was one incident that happened which it demonstrated to me how the truth of how I think the media is talking to itself too much and missing huge parts of a national conversation. Where we live in Peckham, just near our house, there's a little Nigerian cafe opposite the Lidl on the Peckham Road. And I was chatting to them one day about me and what I'm up to, because one of them said he'd seen me on the telly. Yeah. And I said, I'm doing Brexit all the time. And he said, Brexit's great. We all voted Brexit. I said, what, you all voted leave? Because there was me thinking, that leaving the European Union was the preserve of angry white men who don't like immigration and all that kind of thing, which is what you keep being told. So I ended up doing a report about this, and they lined up some people for me, filmed in the cafe, extremely, lovely people. And they all said the reason why they all voted leave was because before the UK joined the European Union, then Commonwealth countries like Nigeria used to be able to, if you lived here, your relatives could come over without a visa because the UK was the part of the Commonwealth and all that kind of thing. So Commonwealth citizens had an entitlement to come here. But they said, as soon as the UK joins the European Union, then suddenly all these Commonwealth countries, and bear in mind a lot of these people, are sort of Windrush generation and all that sort of thing, are suddenly at the back of the queue. Yeah. And in the case of Windrush people being illegally deported from the country, and it's Polish people, and Eastern Europeans who are getting preferential treatment.
Absolutely.
And they all said, we all voted leave because we think it's right and proper that if you're from a Commonwealth country, you should have the right to come here first. And I was absolutely flabbergasted by this because I just thought, well, as you might know, in Peckham, there's loads. There's a big Nigerian community in Peckham, and there's lots of other nationalities, Commonwealth countries living around here as well. And that's probably, conservatively speaking, thousands and thousands of people who voted leave in the referendum from a demographic that nobody ever knew anything about, because nobody had ever bothered to ask them what they thought because they're black.
Yeah.
And so I put this piece on the telly, and I looked around, and I couldn't find a single other example of anybody, from the media in this country having done a story about why black people from the Commonwealth voted leave in the referendum. It was just a completely untold story that was right under everybody's nose. And the only conclusion I could come to was that nobody bothered asking them because they were black.
And actually, I think if they did vote that, a lot of them are probably finding now that, considering how many people have been asked to go home, but they've been here since we were washing milk bottles, we realize that actually it's not quite worked out that way, because the majority.
Yeah, and there's obviously a completely different conversation about whether they're misguided or not, to think in that way, because I don't believe for a second that Brexit's going to be any good for immigration, but that's a separate issue. Yeah. The point is, when I talk about diversity of opinions, if young people from these communities want to make a film about something that's to do with current affairs, I absolutely bet my house that they will come up with subjects and topics and points of view on these things that will be 100% different from what you'd see in the mainstream media. And that's what I think is really important. It's not about black people being on TV who look and sound exactly like white people. That's not it.
No.
It's about diversity of opinions in the national conversation. That's one of the things that I'm trying to do that I think really needs to change.
Tell us about your time traveling, like with Al Jazeera and going to different countries, because obviously you was around a lot of different cultures, a lot of diverse backgrounds and things like that. Tell me a little bit about the time that you traveled, because of course you went to, well, I can't remember the amount of countries you said you went to. Was it 50 or something like that? Different countries around the globe?
I lost count after a while, but it was about, lots, because I mean, when I lived in Moscow with Sky News, I went to every single country that was in the former Soviet Union. So it was amazing. It's like a busman's holiday. Everything was. It was such a lucky experience.
I'm sure in a lot of those countries, because people all look the same and sound the same, what divides them isn't actually color or anything like that. It's poverty. Poverty is what's dividing those people. The places where you've been, the places that you reported on, isn't it?
Yeah, and yes. Obviously, life is very cheap in a lot of these countries, but a lot of these countries are endemically corrupt. Even more corrupt than Britain, but in a more obvious way. And they have no chances at all. But one of the things that struck me, I must say, one single thing, if you ask me, one that really moved me.
Mm-hmm.
There was an incident in Russia. God, what year was it now? 2003, I think. It was the Beslan school massacre when it was in Chechnya, this breakaway republic of southern Russia, where these crazy gunmen took over a school and ended up killing all the children and all the teachers. It was
my goodness,
awful. It was really awful. So covering that and the aftermath of it was the most humbling experience, because every single house you went to in this village had lost at least one person, a child or a teacher or somebody. And normally, in this country, if in journalism you call it a door knock, when you have to go to someone's house where someone's been killed, and how do you feel about your son being killed? Well, why would I want to talk to you? It's awful, and I hated it when I was doing all that. But in Beslan, when you go down there, every single family has lost somebody, and the one thing that they do is invite you into their home, and it was the classical Islamic tradition of if a stranger turns up, then you have to look after them in the middle of the most shocking experience that anybody could possibly imagine. They were the most hospitable and polite people I've ever met, and it was the most incredible experience I've ever gone through.
Some of the people that go through the most traumatic events in life and have the least and littlest portions are the most humble, most wonderful, loveliest people that walk the planet. Actually,
it was the classically correct interpretation of Islam for them. That was exactly what it was about. The people who conducted this massacre called themselves Muslims, but I don't know what they are. But the dignity with which this entirely smashed community was conducting itself, and of course, it wasn't just me. The whole world's media was there.
The whole world's media was there. I guess going abroad as well, you have to put yourself into these kind of situations where you don't know what's going to happen, and it probably can be quite a vulnerable position to be in as well. But before we start to wrap up, and because I can see my thing flashing there on the left hand side in the corner of my eye that we're going to have to finish the show soon, I want to make sure that we got all the information out and we didn't miss anything. So where do we go from here in terms of the upcoming venture that you're going to be doing? Let's just spend where do we go from here?
Just really briefly, I'm glad you asked, because this is obviously my big plug. If you're listening to this and you're from a school, or you're a teacher or someone, then find me and get hold of me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter. I'm at Laurie Lee 67, LAURELEE Laurie Lee 67 on Twitter. Get in touch. I'm absolutely delighted to talk to you. That's the main thing I wanted to say.
Yeah. Please do get in touch. I think that, Mr. Lee is going to be doing some fantastic things in the community. The community definitely needs it. And I think that considering that you didn't have that conventional upbringing, background, going to the best posh journalism schools and all the rest of it. And you're on the ground, you're in South London, you see what's happening out there, you see the divide. You know, you had little Damilola, didn't we, from Peckham some years back, that was, you know, that passed away through stabbing and things like that. And, you know, you can have £1 million houses on one end of the road and on the other, a council estate. So we're living in that great divide there in London, like most boroughs. And so I think there's really something really admirable about what you're doing. It's not like it's by choice, of course, you know, and it's something obviously that you're really, really passionate about. So yeah, I just want to say that it's really inspirational, and I hope, and I wish you the best in your new venture. And I hope that, you know, we can come back again, sitting here in yeah, you know, a few months' time down, you know, early next year or something, and you can tell us about all the great. And
you know what?
I'll co-host with one of your young people.
There you go. That's exactly what I was going to say. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah, from your
or get them on to talk about it.
Get them on to talk about it. Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we're going to be wrapping up the show now. Is there anything else you want to plug out there? Otherwise, I'm just going to wrap up now.
Good. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming and joining us today. Thank you all the listeners that have been locked into the Power Hour today. We're always, always, always happy to have you listening. I hope you've taken some really good food for thought here today. You've been locked into the Power Hour on Revive FM 94.0 and Louise Power. See you again, same time, same place next week.
If you